So now that we have this particular registration form ready, now our job is to go ahead and render this form. So to render this form, first of all, you need to create a view that actually renders out a template, and to that particular template you need to pass in this user registration form. And also in that particular view, you also need to handle what happens when the form gets submitted. So let's go ahead and let's go into the views.py file to create a view for this form. So first of all, you need to remember that you need to import that particular form from user registration form. So here I would say from django.forms, we have already imported the login form, and let's import the user registration form as well. Now let's create a view down right here, which basically is going to say register. So this is a view for register. So I will name this thing as register. This is going to accept a request, and then it's going to return and render a particular template. But first of all, we are going to just go ahead and manage the post method for this particular form. That is what happens if the method is post, which means that what should happen when the user tries to submit the form. So whenever the user tries to submit that form, we want to register the user. And by registering the user, we simply mean we actually need to go ahead and create a user object and save that particular user object in the user model. So let's go ahead and do that. So here, first of all, I would say if the request method is post, so if request.method, if this is equal to post, in that particular case, what we do is we basically go ahead and get the data from the form. So here, in order to get the data from the form, I would say user registration form, and then I would say request.post. So this will fetch me the data here. And now in order to actually get that particular data, I would actually save that data in user_form. So I would say user_form is going to be this form. That means we get all the data. Now let's validate this data, and if the data is validated, that means if the data is well and good, we could then go ahead and create a new user. So here I would say if user form dot is valid, which means that if all the values which are submitted to this particular form, if they are actually valid, then we go ahead and then we create a new user. So now let's create a new user here, or new user object from the form data which we have here. So here we say new user is going to be equal to user form dot save. And now when we save this, we are going to set the commit to false. And that's because while creating this particular new user object, right now we are not saving the password, and apart from the password, we want to save everything else. So here I would pass in the parameter commit as false. And now here let's set the password, and after the password has been set, only then let's go ahead and save that particular form. So here I would say new_user dot, and the method is set_password, and let's say here we want to get the clean password. So we get that from the user form. So we say user form dot cleaned data, and then simply pass in password here. Once this thing is done, we now simply save the new user object. So new user dot save, and we are pretty much good to go. So once this thing has happened, we want to display a message like the new user has been registered, and for that we return and render a template. And to this return, we obviously need to pass in the request object. We also need to pass in the template, which is going to say something like the registration is completed. So we are going to create that template soon, but for now let's go ahead and let's handle the else part of this. So that means whenever the request method is get, in that particular case we actually have to render the form. So here I would say user form equals, first let's get the form, which is the user registration form. Once we get that particular form, we make this thing return render request, and then this form which we get here, we need to now pass this form to a template so that it could be rendered. So here I would say I want to render a particular template, and along with this I also want to pass in user form as context. So let's copy that in quotations, let's paste it up like that. Now it is being passed to whatever template which we pass in here. So now we need to create two templates. One template is actually going to be the template which is going to render up when the form is submitted successfully, and another template when we load up the form. So let's first create a template for loading up the form. So let's go ahead, let's go to the users templates here, and let's create a new template, and let's call it as register.html. And this particular template, as usual, as we know, it actually could use all the parameters which we have in this particular form right here. So what we could do is we could simply copy this, go back here, go to register.html, simply paste this form up over here. We could remove this forgot password from here, and also let's borrow something from the other files as well, like the index. So let's borrow the code to extend from the base template from here. So let me paste that above, and now let's paste this particular form in here. Okay, so once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. And one more thing which you need to do here is that as we are passing user form as the context here, over here, instead of rendering out the form, I now need to say that I want to render user underscore form. So here I would say user underscore form dot asp. And also we could change this input a little bit. So instead of input, let's change it to button. Type is going to be submit, and let's name this thing as register. Okay, so once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. Now the view is ready. The view renders this particular form. So let's pass in that particular template here. So users / that's going to be register.html. Now once that thing is done, now the final thing which is remaining is to go ahead and connect this particular view with a URL pattern. But even before that, we also need to add a template over here as well. So here let's create a template which is users / let's say register done.html. Let's say that's the name of the template which displays the message like the registration is successful. So let's create that template up over here as well. So that's going to be register underscore done.html. Okay. So now let's go ahead, let's copy the code from here, paste it up over here, and I would simply say something like registration successful. Okay. So now the view is ready, the form is ready, the templates are ready. Now we just need to associate this particular view with a URL pattern. So let's go to a urls.py file, and in here, let's create a URL for register. So here I would say something like path, and this path is going to be register / this is going to say views.register, and let's name this thing as register as well. Okay, so once this thing is done, now let's see if the registration functionality works well. So I'll save this and let's test it out. So the server is up and running. Let's go ahead, let's go to / users / register. Now here we get the registration form, which means at least one part of this is working well. So let's try adding some data here and let's see how that works. Okay, so I've added a bunch of data here. I've added the first name, username, email, password, and I've also confirmed the password. So let's click on register, and if I do that, it says registration successful. So in order to check if that's actually true, if the user is actually registered, I could go to admin. Let's log in. And now if I go to users, here I should be able to see another user added up over here, which is Rob. So that means the registration functionality is working absolutely fine and we don't have any sort of error over there. So now once we are successfully able to register the user, now our next job is to go ahead and extend this particular user model which we have. So this user model is nothing but it's an inbuilt model, and let's say if you have to add a couple of more fields to this particular user model, we could do that as well. So let's say if you want to set a profile picture for this user, you could actually extend this particular user model. So in the next lecture, let's learn how to extend the user model by creating another model for the user. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.